Nobody expected Buckingham Palace to shake the world this week, but the moment King Charles unveiled Queen Victoria's sacred crown for Catherine, everything changed overnight. Which should have been a quiet ceremonial gesture instantly detonated into the biggest royal shock of the year, leaving insiders scrambling, commentators gasping, and the public absolutely electrified. Because this wasn't just a crown, this was a message, loud, calculated, historical, one that signaled a shift so monumental that even royal aides were left whispering in hallways. For decades, this piece of regalia has been treated like a relic locked behind unspoken rules, reserved only for moments of highest consequence. So for Charles to place it in Catherine's path now, that wasn't coincidence, that was strategy. And the timing couldn't be more telling. With Catherine still undergoing her treatment, balancing recovery with public duty, the monarchy had been walking a tightrope between transparency and tradition, guarding her privacy while trying to maintain stability. But when she emerged at the Christmas Carol service, radiant yet fragile, hopeful yet honest, the nation felt her resilience in a way that words alone couldn't capture. She didn't try to appear invincible. She appeared real. And people saw her, people connected to her. While critics predicted fading support, the opposite happened. The sympathy turned into admiration, the admiration into loyalty, and loyalty into something the monarchy desperately needs in times like these: unity.
But Charles didn't just see the public reaction, he measured it. He recognized that Catherine had become more than a royal figure. She'd become an anchor during an unstable season. And in the monarchy, anchors are rare, powerful, and priceless. So when Queen Victoria's sacred crown was quietly brought out of the vault, cleaned, prepped, and carefully inspected for Catherine's upcoming ceremonial involvement, insiders understood immediately. This was Charles signaling Catherine's elevated role, not someday, not eventually, but now. Some say this was his way of solidifying the future. Others say it was a response to shifting public sentiment. But those closest to the situation claim it was something deeper. Charles, acknowledging that Catherine, through her grace under unimaginable scrutiny, had become the embodiment of the monarchy's future resilience. And yet, behind the scenes, the move wasn't met with universal calm. Senior courtiers reportedly exchanged alarmed looks, knowing exactly what this gesture would trigger: comparisons, rivalries, controversies, and the inevitable waves of speculation. Because whenever power shifts in the palace, whether symbolic or literal, tremors follow. Analysts immediately dug up the history of Queen Victoria's crown, tracing its legacy of being bestowed only in moments of major transition. Historians began rewriting forecasts, critics prepared their takes, and social media absolutely exploded, calling Catherine the modern royal rebirth, the people's future queen, and the monarchy's most powerful asset. But beneath all the noise, beneath the drama and the declarations, one thing stood out. Catherine didn't ask for this elevation. She earned it through consistency, compassion, and quiet strength. Traits that resonate now more than ever. In an era where scandals dominate headlines, her steadiness has become a rare jewel. Charles knows it. The palace knows it. And now, thanks to this crown, the world knows it too.
What makes this moment even more astonishing is how sharply it contrasts with the turbulence that has surrounded the monarchy in recent years. For a long time, the narrative was dominated by fractures, family tensions, runaway headlines, scandals that overshadowed even the most carefully planned royal engagements. Public confidence wavered, global interest dipped, and commentators questioned whether the institution could adapt quickly enough to survive a world that moves faster than tradition ever anticipated. Yet, in the middle of that storm, Catherine became something unexpected.
the quiet force recalibrating the monarchy's balance. She didn't do it through grand speeches or controversial interviews. She did it through presence, through consistency, through a grace that felt almost out of step with the chaos unfolding everywhere else. And that is precisely what King Charles is capitalizing on now. Those around him say he has never been more deliberate, never more aware of the long game he must play. At 75, he knows his reign is not measured in endless decades. It's measured in impact, legacy, and stability. So the decision to elevate Catherine using a crown tied directly to Queen Victoria, a monarch who reshaped the royal image after a period of national unrest, is not subtle symbolism. It's strategic storytelling. He is linking Catherine with renewal, with restoration, with the idea that the monarchy can modernize not by abandoning tradition, but by reinterpreting it through someone the public already trusts. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the ripple effect is undeniable. Staff members describe a renewed sense of direction, almost as if the fog has lifted and the path ahead is finally illuminated. Events projected for 2025, including high-profile charitable initiatives and revitalized royal tourism, are expected to bring in close to £100 million, reinforcing just how powerful the Catherine effect has become.
Youth polls from Ipsos further confirm the shift. 61% of people aged 18 to 34 say their view of the monarchy improves when tied to progressive causes and genuine community involvement, areas Catherine has deliberately championed. And now, with this crown, she stands as the person most visibly connected to that modern, forward-facing vision. But while the exterior looks polished, the internal dynamics are more complex. A gesture as significant as this does not happen without raising questions. Questions about hierarchy, about succession optics, about the timing of certain decisions. Royal watchers point out that such an honor usually falls closer to coronation moments or significant anniversaries, not randomly during a season of recovery. So why now? Some insiders whisper that Charles is preparing the public for a more prominent role for Catherine sooner than anyone expects. Others say he is quietly reinforcing the future power structure, ensuring that when the time comes, transitions unfold without fractures or hesitation. Still, Catherine remains the calm at the center of the whirlwind. Her focus hasn't shifted toward power. Instead, she turns it toward purpose. She approaches every new responsibility not with entitlement, but with genuine intent, grounding herself in the work that has always defined her. And perhaps that is what makes this elevation so compelling. It's not a coronation of ego, but of essence. Her presence doesn't overshadow the institution, it stabilizes it. And as she steps into this new era with Victoria's sacred crown glimmering as both a symbol and a promise, the monarchy finds itself standing taller, steadier, and strangely more hopeful than it has in years.
What truly intensifies the significance of this moment is how Catherine's rise contrasts with the shadow cast by recent absences, uncertainties, and shifting public expectations. For months, speculation swirled. Questions about her health, her workload, her visibility. Every appearance was dissected, every silence magnified, every gesture turned into a headline. And yet, when she returned, she didn't step back into the spotlight with defensiveness or dramatics. She reemerged with purpose, with softness, with quiet determination, turning what could have been a period of vulnerability into a testament of resilience. That transformation alone reshaped how the public sees her and how the monarchy sees its future. That's why King Charles's decision hits with such force. He isn't simply acknowledging Catherine's loyalty, he's acknowledging her evolution. The tiara, Queen Victoria's sacred crown, comes with a history of women who faced adversity and reshaped their roles through sheer strength of character.
Victoria herself used it during years when the monarchy was undergoing intense scrutiny and reinvention. By choosing that peace, Charles is sending a message far louder than any speech. It's a royal declaration that Catherine is not just stepping into a role, she is anchoring an era. Behind the scenes, this move has stirred a whirlwind of recalibration. Advisors are already mapping out engagements that place Catherine at the forefront of the monarchy's public image. Global tours, environmental initiatives, early childhood campaigns, all set to expand dramatically over the next year. The royal calendar, once dominated by Charles and Camilla, now quietly shifts toward a future shaped around William and Catherine, with her wearing a crown that symbolizes continuity and courage. Insiders say this is the most significant rebalancing of royal representation since the early days of Queen Elizabeth II, a comparison not made lightly.
But with every shift comes tension. Some within the institution worry about visibility overshadowing hierarchy. Others believe Catherine's elevation is not only deserved, but necessary, especially given the monarchy's need to appeal to younger audiences. The Ipsos polls Charles reviewed emphasized something the palace can no longer ignore. The younger generation is not loyal by default. They respond not to symbolism alone, but to sincerity, to impact, to authenticity. Catherine checks every one of those boxes, and Charles knows it. That's why this crown isn't merely an honor, it's insurance. The public reaction has also been revealing. Social media exploded the moment the first images leaked. Words like historic, hair-defining, era-shaping trended within minutes. Even critics found themselves reluctantly acknowledging the strategic precision of the moment. Something about seeing Catherine, serene and steady in a crown with centuries of history, touched a nerve. Nostalgia mixing with hope, tradition blending with transformation. And at the center of it all stands Catherine, not seeking applause, not grasping for power, simply stepping forward because the moment requires it. She has become the monarchy's quiet force, its bridge between legacy and reinvention. And now, with this crown anchoring her place in history, the world can feel it. A shift has begun, and the future of the royal family suddenly looks clearer, brighter, and more deliberate than it has in decades. What truly sets this moment apart is how seamlessly Catherine has stepped into a role that was never promised to her, yet now feels undeniably hers. For years, she has been described as steady, disciplined, uncontroversial. But with this elevation, the narrative has shifted entirely. Suddenly, she is not just the dependable duchess or the elegant future queen consort. She is the monarchy's strategic cornerstone. And the timing couldn't be more precise. With the institution navigating turbulence from health scares, family fractures, and global skepticism, Catherine's emergence as a stabilizing, almost symbolic force is not just welcome, it's essential. Charles understands that the monarchy cannot afford uncertainty, and by choosing Victoria's crown for Catherine, he is choosing clarity. The symbolism is impossible to ignore. Queen Victoria's crown was a defining accessory of a woman who reshaped the monarchy in a time of profound change. It represents resilience under pressure, leadership under scrutiny, and transformation during instability. By placing that crown into Catherine's hands, Charles is making a statement far louder than any formal announcement, that Catherine is the woman capable of holding the monarchy steady while guiding it forward. For many, this was the moment Catherine stopped being a supporting figure and became a historical one. Inside the palace, the energy has shifted dramatically. Senior staff who once directed their strategies toward Charles and Camilla are now dividing responsibilities with a new focus, building Catherine's long-term legacy piece by piece. There are plans for expanded international tours aimed at boosting diplomatic ties, campaigns tied to youth and mental health, and a restructured charitable portfolio with Catherine positioned as a central global representative. Advisors say her upcoming engagements will reflect both tradition and modern relevance, the exact balance the monarchy has struggled to maintain in recent years.
Of course, not everyone sees these changes without concern. There were whispers about how this transition might affect the dynamics between senior royals, especially with Charles still early in his reign. Some worry the public's growing attachment to Catherine could eclipse the king's authority. Others believe that this is precisely what Charles intends, to strengthen the institution by allowing its most trusted and admired figure to take a larger role. And in private, many courtiers admit what the public has already sensed. Catherine's star power has become too significant to downplay. Meanwhile, public response continues to surge. The moment images of Catherine wearing the sacred crown surfaced online, they dominated global media. Young fans praised her poise and strength. Older generations drew comparisons to Elizabeth and Victoria. And analysts described the moment as one of the most strategically important public appearances of Charles's reign. Even critics softened, acknowledging that the combination of Catherine's authenticity and the crown's deep historical weight created an impact impossible to manufacture. At the heart of the frenzy, Catherine remains characteristically calm. Her focus, insiders say, is not on status, but on purpose. A quiet understanding that the monarchy's future stability may rest on her shoulders. And with this crown, with this moment, with this sudden surge of public trust, she steps forward not with noise, but with certainty. For the first time in years, the monarchy feels like it has a true anchor again.
What followed in the days after the crown's unveiling was not just admiration, but a quiet recalibration of how the public viewed the royal family's future. Analysts began revisiting old assumptions, questioning whether Catherine's rise was simply symbolic or the early architecture of a new royal era. Every headline, every broadcast segment, every discussion panel circled the same idea, that Catherine had crossed an invisible threshold, stepping into a space once reserved for monarchs themselves. You could sense the shift, even in the smallest details. How newspapers placed her image above the fold. How commentators shifted from speculative language to definitive phrasing. How crowds outside royal events suddenly doubled. In a world where public trust is fragile and historical institutions struggle to stay relevant, Catherine managed to do something remarkably rare. She made the monarchy feel grounded again. Behind palace walls, even more was unfolding. Charles, according to insiders, grew noticeably reflective in the aftermath of the ceremony. He spoke less decisively, listened more, and held longer private meetings with senior advisors. Some interpreted this as uncertainty, others as humility. But one thing was clear: he understood the magnitude of what he had set in motion. Granting Catherine access to Queen Victoria's sacred crown was more than a symbolic nod. It was a transfer of weight, of responsibility, of legacy. It signaled that he saw her not just as the future queen, but as the present stabilizer of a family long defined by turbulence. And in that realization, there seemed to be both relief and resignation. The quiet acceptance that the monarchy's next chapter may no longer be written solely by him.
Meanwhile, Catherine moved through her duties without spectacle, maintaining the same composed rhythm that has defined her public life. But the change was still visible in the confidence of her posture, the deliberateness of her words, the newfound authority with which she approached her responsibilities. Those close to her say she feels the weight of expectation, but carries it with a kind of serene determination. She knows the institution is fragile. She knows public scrutiny is relentless. And she knows the world has little patience for royal missteps. Yet, she also understands that her influence, used wisely, can rebuild trust in ways no policy or speech ever could.
This awareness, this quiet power, is precisely why her elevation has resonated so deeply with the public. As for the monarchy's future, much will depend on what Catherine chooses to build from this moment. Will she expand her global footprint? Will she reshape the focus of royal engagements? Will she redefine what it means to be a queen in the modern world? These questions now linger, not as distant hypotheticals, but as imminent realities. And while no one can predict how the next decade will unfold, one thing feels increasingly undeniable. Catherine has become the monarchy's compass, pointing it toward stability in an era defined by uncertainty. In the end, the crown placed upon her head was not just a historical relic, but a declaration that amidst doubt, division, and generational change, the monarchy has found its anchor. And in that anchor, perhaps, lies its chance to endure.